Welcome back to Shannons Club TV, where we look back on significant cars from Australian motoring history. In each episode, we reflect on our feature car from two perspectives, on the road and in competition.
We'll also get the latest market news from the Shannons auctions team and meet a proud owner of our feature car. In today's episode, we look at the world-famous British supercar that made all rivals look overpriced, the E-Type Jaguar.
Rarely has any new car invoked such passion as the Jaguar E-Type. Enzo Ferrari proclaimed it to be the most beautiful car ever made. Beauty is one of three key elements that explain the E-Type's appeal. The others are value and performance. It cost 1/3 to half the price of rivals. And Jaguar, cheekily, claimed a then astonishing top speed of 150 miles per hour, thanks to lightweight and a triple carburettor edition of the celebrated 3.8 litre 6-cylinder XK engine. There was plenty of design brilliance. Reportedly, Sir William Lyons bet engineer Bob Knight £5 that he couldn't design an independent rear suspension within a month. Knight did. Bill took out his wallet and handed over the £5 without a murmur, said Knight. And I realised that I had £5 and Bill had his independent rear suspension. Mark, was the E-Type expected to emulate the D-Type success on the racetrack?
I think there was a fair bit of that going on. I mean, you look at the E-Type, it had such strong sort of visual and certainly mechanical links to those beautiful Le Mans winning D-Types. And it also had the new independent rear suspension and all. So it was being seen as this supercar, but the fact is that it was developed primarily as a road car. So I think that sort of expectation was probably a bit unfair, and I'll expand on that a bit later in the show.
As for the E-Type's relatively low purchase price, that was due to Lyons' brilliance at squeezing suppliers, which often had unfortunate repercussions for quality. The E-Type was the first Jaguar to make its debut in continental Europe rather than in Britain, Sir William Lyons choosing Geneva instead of Earl's Court, partly because of the earlier timing, but mainly because he wanted to put his new cat among the European pigeons. It was the undisputed star of the show. When the E-Type arrived in Australia soon after, the response was equally rapturous. Despite some highly advanced elements, in concept the E-Type was still very much the traditional British roadster, as would be the MGB and Triumph TR4. Hard to believe they both came later. In 1961, the automotive world was still innocent, full of Volkswagens, Hillmans, and for us Aussies, EK Holdens. 80 miles per hour was the typical maximum speed. Independent rear suspension and disc brakes, even on the front wheels, were rare. In October 1964, the capacity jumped from 3.8 to 4.2 litres. And in 1966, the E-Type range was expanded to 3 with the less elegant 2+2 variant. The 1971 Series 3 came with a 5.3 litre V12 engine, but was no faster. The E-Type soldiered on for 13 years and never had a true successor until the F-Type in 2013. Mark, would there be an adult anywhere in the world who doesn't know the E-Type is a Jaguar?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, isn't it? But perhaps less well known was the small batch of E-Types made to take on no less than Enzo Ferrari. The need for a lightweight E-Type Jaguar emerged soon after the road car was launched to global acclaim in 1961. Given its instant supercar status, it was no surprise to see the new E-Type competing on UK tracks soon after, achieving promising results against Ferrari's 250 GT. However, Enzo Ferrari was so concerned about the new British car's potential that he fast-tracked development of the stunning 250 GTO. With its sublime 3-litre V12 engine and lightweight construction, the GTO was effectively a purpose-built competition car that could be driven on the road. The E-Type was the direct opposite and comparatively heavy as a result. So, in late 1962, production of 12 lightweight E-Type roadsters commenced, with the goal of losing up to 300 kilograms. These exotics were mostly made from aluminium, including the engine, with fuel injection and dry sump lubrication. An aluminium bolt-on hardtop reduced wind drag at high speeds. The end result was a racing weight below 1,000 kilograms, which gave Jaguar a fighting chance against the formidable Ferraris. Even so, the Italian cars still proved very tough to beat. John, both the 250 GTO and the E-Type lightweights, in the 1960s when they sort of finished their racing careers, they weren't worth much at all, but now they've just gone through the roof.
Well, they're almost countless millions.
Yeah.
And the GTO is a benchmark for classic car values. I mean, there are specialists out there who will find you a GTO and know where all the GTOs are and so on. And the lightweight E-Type's pretty much in the same category.
It's quite incredible, isn't it? I mean, they were built specifically to go racing. Yeah. And when they'd finished their racing life, who would have thought they'd be so valuable? What I'm saying is, what I find really interesting about the classic car market is cars with a strong competition history just seem to be worth far more than normal road cars.
It endows fantastic provenance.
Doesn't it?
That's the thing, because you think about, for example, Peter Brock, that A9X in 1979 where he broke the lap record on the last lap. There's only one of those cars.
That's right.
Yeah,
it just brings its own aura, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And people pay a lot of money for that.
Those who can.
Those who can, indeed. Prominent Australian Jaguar racer Bob Jane, who won multiple Australian touring car championships and a Mark II, was one of a select few in the world to secure an E-Type lightweight, as the company only made them available to special clients. Jane's car was shipped from the UK to Australia in 1963 and was immediately successful, winning the Australian GT Championship on debut, followed by numerous race wins, top 3 finishes and fastest laps. Jane also shipped the car back to the UK in 1964 to prepare for a limited European GT campaign, but the tour ended after one disappointing race at Brands Hatch. Jane and his lightweight continued to enjoy success back home in 1965. However, wins were getting harder to achieve as the UK factory scaled down its direct involvement in motorsport, leaving the lightweights short on development. Jane soon gave up on the rare factory racer and it was later sold, to rank forever as his most regretful sale. Remember to join the Shannons Club, where you can connect with other enthusiasts around the country.
Hello, my name's Glenn Olsen. This is my son Andrew. Together we're part of a team of 5 that spend our days restoring E-Type Jags. This particular example here is an early November 61 build E-Type Roadster. This particular car is special because of how early it is. Any early car is quite an interesting car to build because there was considerable changes made in the early days. It was in a very sad state. It wasn't drivable. The majority of it came to us in a trailer. It's had extensive body work, mechanical work, to the point that there's been no nut and bolt left unturned. The engine in this car, it's the traditional 6-cylinder engine that the E-Types ran, being a double overhead cam, 6-cylinder, cross-flow head, 3.8 litre. My favourite feature on an E-Type really is the overall thing, the whole package. It's the looks of the car, the interior. I think the dashboard's always something that's really nice to look at. I think the seats are just gorgeous in them. And I love the fact that they've just got Jaguar on the boot lid. They don't emphasise the fact they're an E-Type. I mean, most people know what they are anyway. They don't need to read it.
The earliest cars are the best because they've all got quirky features such as the flat floors, welded-in louvers, all the interesting production changes they did in the year 61.
The driving experience of an E-Type, they're still a fun car to drive. They're quite an easy car to drive. Like, to think that this particular car is nearly 60 years old, you could still jump into it and drive it to and from work and feel quite comfortable. This car is actually running its original, what they call a Moss gearbox, which has got no synchro on first.
I think there's a lot of grin factor about the car, and they're still fantastic to drive because they were quite ahead of their time. Stops well, performs well, it's quite nice.
I've been a Shannons customer for as long as I can remember. I've got motorbikes and cars insured with them. My experience with Shannons has been excellent. I mean, when we're dealing in smash work, we never have a problem with them. My passion for E-Types started back when I was 8 years old, when my father took me for my first drive in one. I made up my mind from that day on that I was going to get one.
Shannon's National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon is here with a market update on the E-Type Jaguars. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, John.
Welcome, mate. The E-Type Jaguar, would it be fair to say this is the world's most iconic classic car? Would that be fair?
It's not far off, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been voted world's most beautiful car on several occasions. Enzo Ferrari talked about it being one of the prettiest cars he's ever seen. So, you know, and I mean, I'm a huge fan of the early E-Types. I think they are one of the
I'm
prettiest
wondering
cars.
how many adults there'd be in the entire known universe who wouldn't know what an E-Type was without the need for the Jaguar.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So we've got a pecking order here, obviously. Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, 2+2, all sorts of things.
Yep.
How does it fit at the moment? What's the top of the tree?
Look, I think it's interesting also, you know, I think in the last few years we've seen E-Types really appreciate in value. You know, and that's a world market car, so we're seeing it worldwide. Now, whether part of that is due because maybe the E-Type had sat so far at a certain figure and it was time for it to move up.
Yeah, it was underappreciated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I'd also say part of the increase is also due to the restoration cost of E-Types.
Right.
I mean, they're an expensive car to restore correctly. So I think that's obviously helped the value of the car as well over the years. But if we're talking about picking order, the pick would obviously have to be an outside bonnet latch Series 1, 3.8 flat floor. I mean, they're as rare as hen's teeth. We've probably only got a handful of those in Australia. So that would be the pick.
The one that surprises me most of all is the Series 3 Roadster. Because you'd think with the V12 engine, the wider track and the updated body, you'd think that'd be a really sought after car, but it lags a fair way behind the...
It did lag behind for a while, and we have seen the Series 3 also come up off its own merit, and especially in a manual form. So whether a coupe or a roadster in a manual form is quite rare. And those V12s, when they were, you know, running well, they were a beautiful engine. You know, and people referred to them as sewing machine. You know, sounded like a sewing machine, but you know, they're really a sweet car.
Yeah, that would be the one I'd want to own, I think. But the classic XK engine, it really it reached its zenith. It reached its greatest, its true fulfilment in that E-Type, didn't it?
It was designed for that. Yeah.
I mean, we saw that XK engine obviously get introduced back in the late 40s, and by the time we got to the E-Type, they had really, you know,
it was magnificent.
well tuned it, and you know, the triple carbs, the straight port heads, they were extracting some good horsepower out of it.
Well, they said 265. I don't think it actually had 265, but it certainly had plenty.
Yeah.
And what about the ultra rare E-Type? You know, the lightweights. There were 12 originally built in the 1960s. Then in the new millennium, we had the late production. They built another 6.
Yep.
Would those 6 late production cars be as valuable as any of those original 12, or will they never meet?
No, look, I don't think, you know, they will get to that rarity. But again, if you can't own one of the 12, it's the next best thing to go to. You know, I think if money is no object, why wouldn't you have one? Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's the values have just skyrocketed.
Yeah, they have. And look, we've got some amazing specialists here in Australia, you know, that rebuild E-Types or restore E-Types, and we have seen a couple of outfits here in Australia also build lightweight E-Types.
And you've established that pecking order earlier in the segment, but basically anyone who can get their hands on an E-Type, it's a good investment, isn't it?
Look, they have proven that over the years, and I think, you know, one thing that will always remain, it is one of the prettiest cars ever built.
Yeah, that'll never change.
Absolutely. So the desirability factor is always going to be there.
Yeah, good stuff.
Well, that's a terrific coverage. Thanks very much for joining us,
guys.
Chris.
Thanks, mate.
And remember, you can get all the latest auction results on the Shannons Club website. If you'd like your own image of the E-Type Jaguars in competition, visit the incredible archive at autopix.com.au.
Looking back on the E-Type, John, you know, despite this universal worship, if you like, it did actually have some shortcomings, didn't it?
It did. I mean, it's all very well, I know, to be so wise after the event, but even then it had a relatively narrow track and the guard stuck right out over it. And frankly, it didn't actually handle all that well, despite all the performance. But handling was less of a priority, strangely, in those days.
Just goes to show how far looks can get you in this business, doesn't it? and speaking of that, Jaguar has never been able to replicate the E-Type.
No, they haven't.
They've tried a couple of times, but...
And that's because it was unique. It just came together at the right time. You know, the 5 quid rear suspension, the beautiful styling, following after the D-Type and the gorgeous XKSS, just at that sweet spot in history.
Yeah.
And it never really came again. I think even now with the F-Type.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the immortal E-Type Jaguar, and we'll catch you next time on Shannons Club TV.